TRT World's defence analyst, Oubai Shahbandar, is busy. He's with us here now. In terms of the Turkish troops and the FSA, the Free Syrian Army, how far do we know that they've moved into this Afrin region?
Well, they've moved in not that far, maybe a couple of kilometers, few kilometers across the border, but just enough to liberate at least 4 villages that we know of in the northern tip of Afrin province on the Turkish border. We also know that Free Syrian Army units belonging to the Sultan Murad Brigade from the Euphrates Shield operation are also moving from Al-Bab area and from northern Aleppo into Afrin. So we know from at least 2 separate lines of approach the Free Syrian Army is moving into Afrin, supported by Turkish special forces. It's going to be steady, it's going to be deliberate, and that's why we haven't seen a too far of an advance. They're doing it on purpose to maintain a steady and cautious approach to avoid civilian casualties. And of course, you're dealing with asymmetric warfare here. You're dealing with an adversary that's dug into the mountains, that's dug into the countryside and amongst the populace. So a cautious approach is absolutely warranted in this stage of the military operation.
It remains to be seen how long it'll continue then, doesn't it? But in terms of Russia and the Syrian regime, the Al-Assad regime, what's the reaction for them now to see yet another foreign force, if you like, on Syrian soil?
Well, let's look at it first from the Moscow's perspective. At one point, Moscow had at least around 200 military police in southern Afrin province in Tel Rifat. Clearly, after discussions between Moscow and Ankara, Moscow understood that this operation was inevitable and moved its forces away outside of the line of fire. So there was, at the very least, tacit approval, or at least a green, not a green light, a yellow light by Moscow for the Turkish forces and the Free Syrian Army to move forward. Let's not forget that the Russian Air Force is active in northern Syria and northwest Syria, so that deconfliction of that airspace is absolutely crucial by the Turkish Air Force, given the dozens of sorties that we've seen by the Turkish Air Force. And by now, Damascus's reaction has been very interesting. Now, the Assad regime has denounced the Turkish operation, yet we may have seen some level of collusion between the YPG and the Assad regime. A lot of information, not confirmed information, but there's some rumors out there that the Syrian regime may work with the YPG. It's
difficult, of course, to know what is a rumor and what is substantiated and unsubstantiated, especially in Syria. Now then, in terms of the YPG, how are we gauging their reaction? Because they are firing missiles, some missiles, but nothing like the heavy armaments which will be shot towards Afrin region.
Absolutely. Now, it was interesting to see the YPG's reaction to the Operation Olive Branch. Rockets being launched against Kilis and mortars being launched against the Turkish border city of Reyhanli. Civilians were killed. Civilians were in the line of fire. Let's not forget the target here was cities. It was a residential area. So the contrast here is very clear. While the Turkish armed forces and air force is targeting specific military objectives and targets, the YPG's reaction has been to retaliate by launching rockets and mortars against civilian residences.
Oubai Shahbandar, thank you very much indeed for that. Now,